So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Manolis Tsandakis. I am an economist and I work for MSA, which is a research and development, exploitation and dissemination consultancy in Greece. Welcome to this partner event of EU Green Week 2021, which is one of the most emblematic European events every year. Actually, the EU Green Week is the biggest annual event on European environmental policy. This series of 6 webinars explores the state of the art in Europe along the value chain from collection to valorization of biowaste and discusses business and policy issues relevant to the development of urban bioeconomies across Europe. The webinars are co-organized by the Waste Up, Scalibur, Value Waste and HOOP Horizon 2020 projects. Let me say a big thank you to Mr. James Link, whose contribution was essential for the realization of this webinar. So since you are here today, probably you know that business models are mostly linear and do not consider the benefits of circularity. Today's webinar will share and discuss insights of innovative circular business models for circular bioeconomy. Our speakers: Mr. Stavros Tsitouras, Senior Project Manager at Biosense Institute, Ms. Eugenia Vozakidaki, Environmental Engineer at Raxis Environmental SA, Ms. Tonya Liverod, Product Engineer at BIR Bedrift in Norway, Mr. Jorge Rodriguez de Almeida, Climate and Energy Professional at RDA Climate Solutions, a Portuguese advisory focused in bridging finance with projects. Before we get started, I will mention a few rules. First, the webinar is being recorded. It's being live streamed also on YouTube. The attendees are in listen-only mode, but we really want to hear from you and hear your questions, so you can put them in the chat. We have a lot of time set aside for discussions, so please put your questions there for the speakers. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Stavros Tsitouras, a Waste Up project specialist and researcher at the Biosense Institute in Serbia. That's all from me at the moment. Stavro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manolis, from this very excellent introduction. I will now share my screen. Okay, great. So, welcome from my side as well. My name is Stavros Tsitouras, and I work as a senior project manager at Biosense Institute in Serbia. And my role today will be actually the coordinator of this session, which is expected to be very, very interesting. Concerning my connection with the Waste Up project and the project that are organizing this event, we are WERPAC at 6 leaders in Waste Up projects, which has to do with new business models and marketing concepts in the whole value chain. So we are strongly connected with the subject of this presentation. And just to give you a very, very brief introduction, to try to make the connection between our speakers and the circular economy and business models. I guess that most of you are aware of what circular economy is and have studied many definitions about circular economy. But when it comes to the connection of circular economy and business, we're talking about a systemic approach towards economic development, which actually is designed to benefit all parts, all aspects of the world, like business, society, and of course the environment. Moreover, in the context of circular economy, we're gradually actually decoupling the economic activity from the consumption of finite resources, and we try to design a waste out of the system. This is very, very important, and we will see that together with our speakers lately. And last but not least, through circular economy, we're actually struggling to rebuild capital, and whether this capital could be financial, human, manufactured, social, or even natural. And in order to actually fulfill those 3 bullet points above, the next step is to rethink the business models. So, based on that, what's next? First, we have Evgenia from Draxis. Evgenia is going to set the scene, and she's going to talk about business models in general, but also, of course, circular business models, the challenges that in order to adapt these business models, and also she's going to present some tools that actually can be utilized in order to develop and implement business models. Then we have George from RDA. Together with George, we're going to dive deeper, and we're going to see the circularity and the circular projects through the investor lens. So the question here would be, to be answered, would be how actually investors see innovative and circular projects. Very, very interesting. And last but not least, we will finish with Tonia for BIR, which is actually we're going to see a case study. So we're going to see the theory, how theory is actually implemented in practice. So how circularity is applied in a regional context. We're going to see the Bergen region case. So I will now give the floor to, and then after we finish the conversation, a panel discussion will follow, so your questions are highly appreciated. So I will now finish my presentation, and I will give the floor to Evgenia in order to start the session. Thank you very much. Evgenia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stavros. So I will start sharing my screen. I hope you are all seeing my screen now. Hello everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you, Stavros and Manolis, of course. So my name is Evgenia Vougiazidaki, and I am happy to present today this topic. I'm a chemical engineer with an MSc Environmental Engineering, and I work for Draxis, who is partner in the HOOP project, and my expertise lays mainly in the waste management and circular economy. Give me a minute. So what will be the content of my presentation today? At first, we will briefly refer to the evolution of the business model concept, and we will give some examples of circular business models, categorizations, and frameworks as proposed by the leading organizations. Then we will see how these are related to the biowaste management, and we will highlight the challenges connected to the adoption of circular business models in the biowaste sector. Finally, I will present you, as Stavros said, some the most common business model tools and a case study of a completed business model canvas. Let's start with the introduction to business model. The term of business model has become a popular term, and from the early 90s, several authors try to formulate definition. However, a common definition still does not exist. What about the evolution of the business model concept over time? Generally speaking, the origin of the business model term for unspecific users can be placed from 1950 to 1975. Then, after 1975, the business model term has been incorporated to computer science area into the e-business. Following, it was in 1995 that the business model was introduced as an abstract representation of the company's architecture, framing the theoretical approach of the business model concept. After 2000, business model was introduced as an integrated description of the entrepreneurial activities in an aggregated form. And finally, after 2010 and until today, the business model management has evolved as an integrative approach. More specifically now about the circular business models. Throughout the literature, researchers have provided various approaches on how to establish the categorization of the types of circular business models. For example, Achtenberg et al. Proposed the value hill business model tool, based on which the companies can position their business model in a circular context and develop their future strategies for a circular economy. In a circular economy, the value is added uphill, but it's also retained as long as possible and throughout cascading approaches during downhill. Based on this theory, Achtenberg has identified 3 phases of product's life: the before use, the use phase, and the after use phase, based on which 4 categories of circular business models were determined. And which are those? At first, we have the circular design models, which correspond to business models that operate in the pre-use phase or the design of a product. We have the optimal use models that are related to the use phase of a product, the value recovery models, which involve the phase after use of a product. And finally, we have an overarching category, the circular support models, which are circular business models supporting the management and coordination of circular value networks. The European Investment Bank also uses this categorization in order to guide the bank the origination and appraisal of circular economy projects. Another categorization has been proposed by Lass and Rudvis in 2015. The main 5 circular business model categories that were identified are the circular supply chain, the recovery and recycling, the product life extension, the sharing platform, and the product as a service. In the figure, we can see how these categories are related to the phases of the product's life. And for example, the product life extension category, the red lines, in this model, we see that it seeks to maintain and improve products by repairing, upgrading, remanufacturing, or remarketing them. OECD also uses this categorization proposed by Lass and Rudvis. A promising approach is also the Resolve framework that is developed by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in 2015. This framework identifies 6 areas that can be considered by the businesses and the governments to achieve transition to circular economy. And those are regenerate, share, optimize, loop, virtualize, and finally exchange. In the separate boxes, you can see the areas included in each type of circular business model category. Let's take an example, the loop category, which is an area includes activities aiming at the remanufacturing of products or components, at materials recycling, including biological processing, and at extraction of biochemicals from organic waste. Now, let's think in which one of these categories the bio-waste management practices are included, in which categories they fit. From the frameworks that we have already mentioned, according to Achtenberg et al., bio-waste management practices fall under the after-use phase of the product, focusing on value recovery models. These business models generate revenue by capturing the value from used products. Then, according to Lass and Rudvis, bio-waste management practices can be approached by the recovery and recycling model, which targets the reutilization of waste and byproducts by recovering end-of-life products to regenerate valuable elements or by utilizing waste directly as a feedstock. Finally, in the Resolve framework, bio-waste management operations are categorized under loop, including potential recycle, extraction, remanufacturing, or digestion processes. Regarding now the market penetration of circular business models, according to the OECD report about the business models for the circular economy in 2018, the market share of business models is still limited. As we can see also in this table, this of course implies considerable potential for the future, as you can understand. But what are the challenges for implementing the circular business models, especially in the bio-waste sector? At first, we could refer to the legal challenges, which are related to the lack of an effective and stable, supportive European regulatory framework. Also, existing policies are often inflexible and unable to support the transition into circularity. We have also challenges related to investment and costs, lack of developed markets and insufficient demand of bio-based outputs and products that makes the investors often reluctant. We have also high initial investment costs that are required in order to move to a new business models. Additionally, the feedstock diversity and the supply security can become a significant challenge for the development of a viable new business model. We have also other social challenges, social aspects, such as the lack of awareness and the demand of customers. Customers feel worry about products and materials that come from bio-waste management. We still have the linear way of thinking established, so we know that there is need for behavioral change. Also, the integration throughout the value chain is a challenge for bio-based industries. Different stakeholders should collaborate successfully. And last but not least, we have technical challenges. For example, the need for additional innovation and technologies for bio-waste management, and also the massive development is needed in order for the bio-based economy to promote the transition away from the fossil resources. Now I would like to mention some business model tools. A business model tool practically represents the different fundamental elements of a business and aims to clarify how these different aspects of the business are related to each other. It's, let's say, a quick overview of the business model of a company or an organization. The most common and recognized business model tool is a business model canvas, and more specifically the one we see here, and is the one that was proposed by Osterwald and Pickner. This business model canvas constitutes a strategic management tool for developing new or documenting existing business models consisting of 9 building blocks. And as we see, these are the customer segments, the value proposition, the channels, the customer relationship, the revenue streams, the key resources, the key activities, key partners, and the cost structure. Depending now on the maturity of a company, we can propose a simpler tool also. If a company is a startup, is in its infancy, then the recommended tool for starting with a business plan development is the Lean Startup Canvas. The difference between the two is the alteration in 4 units. The key partners is replaced with a problem in the Lean Canvas. The key activities is replaced with the solution in the Lean Canvas. The key resources with the key metrics. And finally, the customer relationship with the unfair advantage. Furthermore, business model tools which integrate the sustainability targets into business model philosophy have been developed. Such a tool is the Flourishing Business Canvas, which consists of 16 new building blocks that takes respect of the economy, the society, and the environment. Finally, we have also the Circular Business Canvas, which was developed by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It is based on the canvas proposed by Osterwald and Pickner, and has also 9 building blocks, but emphasizes also circular aspects, such as what other types of value a business may promote, for example, the human, the social, or the natural capital, partnerships with organizations across the value chain to benefit from circularity, how the company could build feedback loops and play a role in reverse logistics chain, and also how company can reduce dependence on the use of finite resources. And let's see now a case study, which is the Phoenix company. We can see their business model canvas completed. This is a company which is global mission is to unleash the potential of waste, and especially food waste. They have developed a technical solution in order to create a matchmaking platform in order to connect retailers and charities. We can see in the first box, for example, they name specifically their partners and also group of partners. In the other box, we can see their key activities. As we said, they manage a digital platform, and they are an intermediate, let's say, and connect waste suppliers, which are mainly the retailers, with the waste receivers, that is mostly the charities. I would like also to highlight that their value proposition, they recognized also the environmental and social value, and also they have included in their canvas the environmental and social cost and impacts. Closing this presentation, I would like to mention the important takeaways. Business model is a popular term which practically describes the rationale of how an organization creates and delivers and captures value. Throughout the literature, researchers and leading organizations have provided various approaches on how to establish the categorization of the types of circular business models. The market share of circular business models is still limited. This, of course, implies a considerable potential for the scale-up of business models in many sectors in the future. Different challenges for the implementation of the circular business models have been recognized, such as legal, social, technical, and economic. And finally, we have the business model canvas, which is a strategic management tool for developing new or documenting existing business models. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Evgenia. Very, very interesting presentation. I see that a lot of things are happening in the field of circular business models and business model tools. So, based on your presentation, actually, I have a couple of questions for you. One thing I was wondering is, because we're talking about circularities, actually can be applied in both, let's say, cities or private sector companies. So, what is the differences in implementing circular business models in these two categories, cities and private sector?
Of course, there is difference. At first, they have a different scope. A private company, in the private sector, we have profit-oriented organizations. They want to have revenues from a product. They want to sell their product, while on a city, they are, let's say, community-oriented. They support different social or environmental causes and things like that. So that means also that they have a different audience, and that means that they should choose different channels to reach their audience. And of course, there is difference in which phase, let's say, they are focusing. For example, a city should focus on a planning phase. It's very important because they have to develop, let's say, a roadmap. They have to develop a vision and strategy for all sectors in a city and set their goals and targets. On the other hand, a private company should focus only perhaps in one product.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So
excellent.
that's quite different how you have to set your business model.
Great.
That's some basic differences.
Yes, clear. One other question would be, like, because you talk about the conventional business models, tools, and sustainable ones. So, are there any difference between them? And if yes, which are the differences?
Of course, the sustainable business models tools take into consideration a wider group of stakeholders, and within that is also the society and the environment. They don't just want to find out how we will create value for a customer, but also it includes concerns about benefits and impacts in the society, in the environment, in job creation and things like that. So it's quite a different way of seeing how you are doing your business, where you are focusing.
Great. So we already have a question from the audience, and that's great. Thank you very much. Katerina has also posed a question that has already been more or less replied. We also have a question from Lisa. I don't know whether you heard. Let's see the question. Thank you for the presentation, Evgenia. So the question is, have you heard about Eco Canvas developed by Nicola Serandola? I don't know if you heard of it. To be honest, I haven't. But I'm just asking, have you? Yes.
No, I don't know exactly about this canvas, but
so it's a good opportunity to find out.
I don't, so I cannot propose if it's better or not, but I can say that it's a general comment for these tools, the business model tools, that it's kind of canvases, let's say, that it depends what do you want to do. If you see that this canvas covers more your scope or what you want to go, where you want to go deeper when you develop your business plan, it can be more suitable.
Great.
But I'm going to search about it, about this canvas,
it
and
is
include it in the next presentation.
Exactly.
Thank you, Elisa.
It's actually in the Q&A session, so you can find it there. Okay, thank you so much, Evgenia. We'll have the chance to talk again in the panel discussion. Thank you so much for the presentation. So, next, I will give the floor to George. Hello, good afternoon, how are you?
Hello, thank you. I'm fine, and I hope that you are all fine also. Just 1 second. That you are all fine also. And So basically, I just want to thank for the invitation to share this view, a different view after this great presentation from Eugenia. So I will share the view of the investors. Before moving to the view of the investors, I would like to share what is RDA, the company that I represent. So basically, RDA is a Portuguese advisory company that focus bridging the finance with projects. So we see, and I will show that later on, that there is a gap between the finance and the projects, and so for that we try to develop tools that make these links easier, that help projects to go to the ground with the investments. So moving to my presentation, how do investors see innovative circular projects? So that's a great question. And first of all, I think that they see it as an uncharted territory. That means that there are things that they don't understand or things that they don't know, and in many cases that they haven't tested. So for an investor, that represents risks. And when it represents risks, he wants to stay back and watch what happens, or invest with a lot of caution. Also, talking about risks, they do not understand the full amount of risks, and I will also come back to this later on. They will not understand all the risks that are involved in these projects. As Eugenia was saying, there are consumer related barriers or regulation related barriers. So those are seen as risks for the investor. And whenever the investor does not understand the risks, he cannot valorize the risks. If he cannot valorize the risks, he will think that the risks are the higher possible. And if the risks are the higher possible, the cost of the money or the conditions for those investments will not be the most attractive. So what we need is to reduce these risks. And as I said, what we see is that there is a gap in the market. And that gap happens because we see a lot of cities, a lot of project developers saying that we do have great projects, but no one is able to invest, or we are looking for the money. And on the other hand, we have the financial sector saying we have a lot of money, we want to deploy that money in great projects that can change the impacts of climate change, or can go directly to environmental projects, but we don't find those projects. So we need to find those projects. So there is this gap. And why there is this gap, especially on circular projects? Mainly because this circular business model, as we saw, it's developing new business models or introducing existing business models that exist in other sectors to new sectors. So this is something that is new, this is innovative, and whenever there is innovation, there is this fear. Also, we understand that there is a lack of financial tools. For instance, on the evaluation or due diligence. Due diligence is a term that is used by the investors. So that's the way that they check the project, whether it's in aligned with their requirements. So there is a lack of these tools. And so for that reason, it's hard for this investment, and it's hard to bridge these two worlds of the finance and the project. So I see that there is a space for these types of different parts of this puzzle. So the puzzle that I call here the sustainable finance puzzle is what we think that is needed to develop the market. In one hand is to have the finance, so there is a need to have the money in the market. But in the other hand is to have the development of pipelines. So we need a lot of projects that are what we call bankable projects, so projects that are ready to be invested on, available, so that the market grows. But for that, we need to build capacity among the different stakeholders. And a relevant point is the standardization. I will go back to the 70s and 80s, where the energy, the renewables started. And if you think about the wind farms, they were starting, and there was no standardization around it. And then someone developed this P90 way of assessing the projects and way of the investors understanding how the projects and what will be the revenues of those projects. After that development and the fact that everyone relied on those standards, so the investments started to go to the market. So for the circular, we need the similar approaches. But to make it clear, I have some examples here. On the finance, we need what we call soft loans, for instance, that provide support to the development of the project. So we need this project development finance. Also equity for companies, for instance, startups or other types of companies that need this money to go for the market. Also, we will need that banks or other types of investors provide with this long-term project finance. So we need this because these projects usually have a big payback or a payback that is long-term, and for those we need to have these types of finance. On the pipeline, what we need is technical assistance. For instance, that's what HOOP is doing, the project that I represent here. So giving technical assistance to the stakeholders, to the cities, for them to develop these projects. And one lesson learned from other sectors that is quite relevant for the circular, also for circular projects, is the fact that usually projects are with not very big, so they have a low investment volume or a low ticket size, as we call it, and for that investors are not able to invest because there are transaction costs for this investment, and so they need investments with a certain amount. And for that, what we see in the market that there is a need is this aggregation of projects through these procurement frameworks that allow aggregation of different projects, combining them and make that in one big project that will be more attractive and we will have better conditions for the capital. On the building capacity, basically, we need to build capacity among all the stakeholders and users, the supply chain, and the financing industry. So all of people have to be trained on this topic. And as I said, on the standardization, we need standardization documents, standardization systems on the underwriting and risk management. As soon as we have those, investments will flow more easily. So talking about risks, and just to highlight this point, because this is quite relevant when we talk about investment, circular business models are considered risky because there are uncertainty returns. So usually investors, if you go to the page of private fund investment, you will see that they say that they want long-term and stable revenues. Of course, that's their wish, because if you have stable and long-term revenues, you can easily design your cash flows, you can easily design the model behind it, and so it's easier to finance. But if you don't have it, what makes it hard is that the fact that these business models are the new kid on the block, so they are just brand new and they are not understood by all the investors. So financial institutions, they need to understand and integrate this circular economy terminology and indicators in order to mitigate these risks and also to identify new business opportunities. Because this is I think that the knowledge flows on the both sides. So also investors, usually if you think about a private investor or a fund that invests in a project from early start of that project, the investor will also support these investments with knowledge that they have from other sectors, from other projects that they have financed. So they like to see these new business opportunities, and sometimes they even develop these new business models that can be used. So, but just for those that are not so aware of when we talk about risks, what we are talking about, there is a first risk that everyone understands is the credit risk. So basically, whether I will be able to repay the loan or the money that I got. But there are other risks. And other risks can go from regulatory, market, currency, technology, whether the technology is innovative or it's a proven technology, performance risks, whether the contract has performance indicators. If we have it, there is a risk there that we don't comply with these indicators. Also, everything that relates with operation, maintenance, prepayment and payments risks, we need to get the money, management, construction, etc., etc., etc. So there are a lot of risks that should be analyzed when we develop a project in order to be mitigated. Some of those risks we cannot clearly take out, but what we can do is, for instance, in some cases, have insurance. Just a simple one when it comes to currency. If I'm buying something in a foreign currency, I can have an insurance that covers this difference or fluctuation of the currency. Of course, this costs money, and if it costs money, we need to make sure that the project allows to do it. Also, it's important to understand that the kind of finance that we will deploy in a project depends on the stage of that project. For instance, we see that feasibility studies usually cost thousands of euros, and they are supported by equity or quasi-equity or even grants that can allow to do this feasibility study. But when it comes to the project development, so moving to the ground, we are talking about millions of euros, and for that, when I talk about project development, we are talking about the design, engineering, all of those, and sometimes we talk about a million of euros. And for that, we need these equities or incentivized contracts, soft loans, so those types of finance that will help you develop the project. And then it comes to the implementation. Here, it will be several million of euros of investments usually. Of course, this depends on the size of the project, etc. But just an example. And for that, that's where guarantees, green bonds, and equity, these types of finance could came on and play a role. And then we have the operation, where refinance it's a key word. So there is this. All of these are different types of money, different types of investors that could play a role, and different types of suppliers involved. So when we think about the project, we need to think about what stage we are, what we need, and who is going to develop what, because there will be different requirements and different risks to be considered. Just to give an overview also, that what I'm saying is not just myself saying this. If you go to the Circular City Funding Guide that was set up by the EIB, when they talk about financial instruments, for instance, they say that there is a sentence here saying that some of these instruments have been developed recently, while others are well established. It should be noticed, however, that there is little practical experience with applying this instrument in circular contexts. So this means that there is no experience of the results, so we don't understand all the different variables that can impact the process, so we don't understand the risks. But not all is bad news. We have very good news. And for instance, we see the growth of the funds that are dedicated to circular economy. We see a lot of new funds dedicated to the topic, and we see traditional investors, such as, for instance, commercial banks, now thinking about this topic and even having lines that are dedicated for the topic. And when this happens with the commercial banks, that means that there is a demand, because usually commercial banks are not proactive, they are more responsive. So when they launch something to the market, that means that there was some demand for it. And so what we are watching now is, and over the last few years, is the growth of this investment focusing the topic of circular economy and under the umbrella of sustainable finance. Also, as a note, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And Eugenia on the last presentation explained it very well, that there is a lot of information in the market that could help you design your model and could help you with the tools that you need to unlock certain barriers that you might find in the process. Here are some examples, but there are many more in the market. And a relevant point just to stress here is that we are not alone. The European Commission is now setting up the EU taxonomy for sustainable activities. That means that all the investments made through EU partners, for instance, EIB, or a part of those investments, the biggest part of those investors, must follow the taxonomy. And for that, they could not do harm to one of these topics, and they must be aligned with the taxonomy. And we see here, so that means that the project must comply with climate change mitigation, adaptation, environmental, circular economy, also, and pollution control, and biodiversity. The only documentation that is available for now, it's related with climate change mitigation. So we hope to see over the next months the release of the other packets, also on the circular economy. But even in the energy, there are already some activities that are considered under the sustainable taxonomy, and others that are not. Here are some examples, but you can explore this later on. So, and just to end my presentation, because I'm taking a little bit more time, what we do at Hoop Project is exactly bringing these tools to the market in order to link these two worlds. So bringing standardization and due diligence tools that could help bridging the projects in one hand with the investors in the other hand. And last slide from my side, just to invite if there are investors in the room, investors, European banks or local banks, financiers. Investors could be seed capital, could be infrastructure investors. So if you want to be involved in this topic, if you want to learn more, join the Circular Investor Board of the Hoop Project, and then you will have the chance to shape what we are doing and to help us bringing these tools to the market in a way that you can use them later on. So now time for questions. I'm not seeing the chat. I'm not sure whether there was some questions directed to me.
Thank you, George, very much. I can see the chat as well, and I have some questions as well. Thank you very much. Your presentation was very interesting. I see here that a lot of things happening in the circular economy investment scene, to put it this way. So you said that actually investors are already starting to invest, but we want, let's say, proof for that. So could you give us some evidence or some examples that could actually support this transformation that you said earlier?
Yes. So what I see at the moment, and I see it a bit across all Europe, so is infrastructure funds, so funds that invest in infrastructure, namely on the renewables. So they are now moving for other sectors. They move it for this waste to energy that is sometimes discussed, whether the sustainability of the waste to energy topic, but they move it there, and now they are moving for the waste to resource. We see a lot of investors having, even in the scope of the funds, having clearly stated that they want to invest in waste to resource projects. And so this covers exactly bio-waste and all of those sub-products. It's a movement that it's happening with different investors.
Great, that's very clear. We have a question from Martin from the audience. I'm gonna read it to you because it's a little bit long, but still we will read it. So congratulations on your presentation. I really like the idea about aggregate projects, and I understand the fact that they are more attractive to investors. Actually, in the particular case of biowaste management valorization, it is often the case that in order to provide a comprehensive solution, there is a need for different technology providers to work together. However, The result is more complex. Business models, intellectual property right issues. What's your opinion, advice on this? Wow, good one.
Yeah, good one and hard one,
Yeah.
because that's a $1 million question also.
Exactly.
But trying to answer. When I say to bundle projects, we need to have in consideration whether those are bundleable or not. So we cannot mix up projects that have completely different risks, because then the result we don't know what will be. So when I say about bundling projects, they should have some kind of similarities between them in order to be bundled, and also the risk should not be completely different. When we mix up different technologies, different types of providers, and the end users or the municipalities, for instance, that have these projects have no relation between them, that's not very effective. When we mix projects from a certain region, instead of go municipality by municipality, go by region, and those projects have a common framework, whether they could have different technologies involved, but they have a common framework. So that's what we should aim for. But I would recommend to think about the risks and what's the common ground for the topic. If there are no common ground, then it's not good to bundle. If there is a common ground and the risks are more or less the same, that's a good opportunity.
Great. I guess you covered the question very well. And one final question for you, and then we have the chance to discuss in the panel. Because I've seen that you put a lot of emphasis in the EU taxonomy in your presentation. The question is, when and how do you think that the EU taxonomy will actually impact the market?
That's an easy one to answer. It's impacting now. If you go if you talk with people in the banks that are setting up the new credit lines or new lines, for instance, they will tell you that now they are focusing also on the taxonomy, because they will need to report under the taxonomy quite soon. For instance, asset managers, they really need to, they will start reporting this year according to taxonomy. So there is this need of starting to report, and they know that they will have to report the new portfolio that they got, that they will have, but also the existing portfolio that they got in their hands. So they need to start doing this work now, and they are doing it. So it really impacts the way that we see things now. And for instance, we see on policies from EIB, on the loan policies from EIB that are completely and fully aligned with the taxonomy. And so if EIB has this alignment, they will deliver the money for the local bank, for instance, and the local bank will ask for those requirements at the end user. So the impact is happening now.
Great. Thank you very much, Jose. We have the chance to talk about in the panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Okay,
so, Tonya, hello. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining. The floor is yours. Tonya, please.
Thank you. I will just try to put on my presentation in full screen mode.
Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tonje Livre, and I work for Bierbedrift in Bergen, Norway. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our practical use of new business models with respect to circular value chains. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the Bergen region to set the context, the structure of the Bier Group, what we do at Bierbedrift, and why and how we're working with new solutions for biowaste, how we're working with research and development, what our long-term goal is, and how the market situation is here in the Bergen region. And I'm going to put a little bit of extra emphasis on the expectations for added value throughout the value chain. And then I'm going to sum up with some concluding remarks. First off, I'm situated in Bergen on the west coast of Norway. We have over 365,000 inhabitants in this region. We cover about 138 square kilometers, and we have both urban and rural areas. And we're surrounded by mountains, which give us a lot of rainy weather. And since we're located on the west coast, it's not so surprising maybe that our main economic activities are connected to oil and gas and ocean technology, seafood, and shipping. To put this in context, I want to talk a little bit about the BIR Group. We're the local waste management company in the Bergen region, which is consisting of a mother or a parent company and several daughter companies. And in the HOOP project, 3 of these companies are participating together. I'm representing BIR Bedrift. We're a daughter company working in the commercial waste market. Well, we're also joined by the administrative part, BIR AS, and the BIR Privat, which is handling waste from households in the region. So we're kind of approaching this from all possible angles to kind of promote the best possible solutions for biowaste in our region. BIR Bedrift specifically, we are doing waste handling and pre-treatment solutions for both household and commercial wastes in the Bergen region. We handle approximately 70,000 tons of waste per year, and we're competing in the commercial market, so we are handling approximately 25% of the local market. In this context, what's maybe the most interesting thing is that we have established a pilot plant for feed production where we produce feed for insect and algae from food waste. And it's this specific value chain that I'll be talking a little bit more about today. Because in the Bergen region, we generally have a lack of local solutions for food waste. There are no treatment plants specifically within the close region. And the technical solution, which is prevailing in Norway right now, biogas, is not great in our part of the country where we don't have anywhere to put the digestate, the residual material resulting from the biogas plant. So we need to find something else to do with the food waste to valorize it. And at the same time, it's a very high demand locally for more environmentally sustainable solutions locally, so that we don't have to transport the waste out of the region, both on the commercial market and from households and municipalities. In addition, there are new sorting requirements for biowaste starting in 2023, where both households and commercial businesses having waste similar to that of households have to sort biowaste, which is motivating our search and development of new solutions for biowaste in this region. And we are working with this through research and development. We are collaborating with startup companies, which are doing some of the technological development, while we are doing the kind of traditional waste collection and pre-treatment services. Right now, we have created a pilot plant where we handle vegetables and fruits from the pre-consumer food waste market. This is only from businesses because we are not allowed to use household waste or commercial waste containing meat and fish. So right now we're only processing vegetable matter. And in this plant, we process the feed and process the food waste and make feed for insects and for single-cell proteins and microalgae. And what we hope to achieve here is to create a circular value chain where food goes back into the food chain, so that when we produce the feed for the insects and algae and single-cell proteins, they can become food and feed for animals and humans in the next stage, and thereby keeping the nutrients in a loop. And our long-term goal is to develop an industrial symbiosis where all these different processing technologies can benefit from each other to create a truly circular and environmentally suitable solution here in the Bergen region. but that's a little bit further down the road, but that's what we're working towards. So we've gotten pretty far with the technology, both for pre-processing the food waste so that it's usable as a feed, and also with the technology for processing insects and microalgae. So what we're working with right now is the market, because particularly in the commercial market, there is very large interest in new technology and new value chains and everything that's green and environmentally sustainable is great, and everyone is cheering and supporting you with words. But when it comes down to actually doing something and getting these new value chains up and running, there's a little bit more resistance. So everyone is super interested in hearing about the technologies and the possibilities and the new things that are being created. But when you ask them to actually sort a new fraction or participate in the payment models, there's a little bit less interest, unfortunately. That is one of the barriers that we are experiencing right now, as we are only allowed to use a very specific fraction of the food waste for these treatment technologies. So we are kind of 100% dependent on the commercial market, as we're not allowed to use household, and they are not at this time very open. We are slowly getting there, but it takes very much time. And one of the issues that we are working with is who should profit from developing these new technologies and the new circular value chains. Because when you take something that has previously been a waste, like food waste, and then make it into a new product, like insects that can be used for food or feed, it becomes a resource. And then the mentality of the waste, the customers that possess the waste is changed. So from previously paying for it to get rid of it, it's a problem to be handled. They are now expecting to be paid because they are now providing a resource which can have added value throughout the value chain. At the same time, the downstream processors, the insect producers, the microalgae producers, they are of course also expecting to get paid because they do a waste treatment service. They take something that is a waste and turn it into a new product, similar to the kind of traditional way of handling food waste today, even if it's through a composting plant or a biogas facility. The waste processing facility gets paid to handle the food waste. Additionally, they also expect to get paid for the final products, obviously, which is the insects and the algae. But the one of the issues here is that there are also costs associated with collection and pre-processing and valorizing of this new technologies and this kind of research. So everyone's very excited to get paid, which is of course great, but that's kind of not the main motivation for doing this. And it's a common effort throughout the value chain, where both the food waste processor, us as a waste management company, the new treatment technologies through insect production and microalgae production, as well as the fruit production part of the value chain, we all have to collaborate to make this work. And in the beginning, when we're starting up, it's very difficult to distribute the costs and create business models throughout the value chain that actually fit together and provide a realistic distribution of the costs and the input from the processes. And to some extent, the added value that you get from creating new products at the end, the insects and the microalgae, is to some extent eaten up by the processing through the value chain, because in contrast to traditional treatment technologies, which is usually a simple as possible to kind of limit the extra costs. These new technologies, they add processing costs, and they add technology input and energy input to kind of actually turn it into new products. And that is something that is often bypassed or forgotten in the rush to kind of to develop the technology and put it into practice and deliver these technological solutions that the market demand and so desperately want. So that's one of the things that is difficult to kind of integrate into the whole value chain when developing this. So what we have learned so far from our process here in Bergen is that to some extent, a lot of the technology for implementing this new value chains are there. We can sort the waste properly, we can transport it, we can pre-process it, and the technology for both insect and microalgae production are absolutely getting quite far at this time. But the challenges are very often associated with the market, both those who possess the waste upstream and downstream as well. Insects and microalgae are very new products, and it takes time to test this and properly integrate it into existing food production systems. And the holistic business models are to some extent also missing, because everyone is working independently, but it's also a large collaboration throughout the value chain to get this to work. And it's very easy to get kind of rushed along, because you have to develop the technology and you have to test it in practice and you have to get going with something physical, some installations to get going. But the business models often then get put off for later, while it might be a more suitable place to start the process of developing new circular value chains. And the laws and regulations, as Evgenia also pointed out, is a big barrier, as we're not allowed to use it. It's very, very smart to be to take caution and not just openly allow everything. But it takes a lot of time to get things approved and tested. And that also slows the development and also the implementation in the market. And it's also very, very easy to be rushed, to be so eager for everything to work and get going, that you kind of forget to take time and go through all the steps. So it's important to take your time and also be patient. And it's also important to collaborate on a much larger scale than what has probably been normal in linear value chains, because then every part of the value chain can mostly run on its own. But these new circular value chains are so dependent on everything being connected and working together. So timing this and timing all the actors are very, very important. And of course, early adoption and someone being eager to join from the start to divide the risks. I think BIR has done an excellent job there, has been supporting these startup companies from very early on. And we've been doing a lot of development at our end as well, which kind of motivate investment and also makes the market mature. And finally, we're dependent on larger volumes and then back to the regulations and laws, which allow us to use a larger amount of the available biowaste into these new technologies. So that was pretty much all I had. Thank you for inviting me and allowing us to share our story.
Thank you, Tony, very much for the presentation. Very, very interesting, and I see that you have to encounter many challenges in order to get there. This is my impression, but you have to keep trying. My first question would be, we have a question for the audience as well, but I have to start with a question myself. So, because in the previous part, we talked about business models and so forth, but now we're talking about the specific case, a practical example. So, do you have any tips, well-developed circular business model in practice, what somebody should pay attention on?
I think it's very important to focus on actually some of the tools, for example, that Evgenia presented, that it take time and actually analyze the business model and not get too eager, or if it's of course important to be eager, but also allow time to process the more business aspects of these developments, because it's very easy to get rushed along with the technology and doing things impractical. And a lot of investors also refer to you have to have something up and running before we invest more, or before we can have any faith that you will go through with this. So it's kind of a rush to get something to show off and to show that it's working in practice, but actually using more time on the business model development in the beginning. I think that's a good place to start.
Great. Let me have a look at some questions from the audience here. We have Gloria. Tonya, thank you for the presentation. The question is, which kind of barriers do you find in order to use the insects and microalgae from biowaste as human food? This task will not be easy. I'm sorry, it will not be easy for many reasons. Do you have the answer in that?
Yeah. Well, in theory, the whole concept or the concept behind us going for these specific technologies, insect production and microalgae, is that these are kind of the technologies used in nature for renovation. So we're kind of mimicking those natural systems and just kind of putting it in an industrial context. So naturally, both insects and microalgae kind of live off the biowaste of the nature. So in theory, this is kind of a easy concept, but then putting it into an industrial system takes technology development, of course, and market development, but also this bioproduct acceptance. So the insect company that we've been working on have been doing a great effort in Norway to promote insects in human food. They made an insect bread, which was available for quite a long time in usual food stores. So kind of making it not so gross by including it in normal products like smoothies and breads and cakes and everything, putting it inside the pizza dough or something like that. It's so it's about kind of integrating all the parts of the value chain, from the product development and the technology development and the upstream kind of sourcing of the material to acceptance in the market for these kind of products. So it's a long process, but so you have to have patience.
Great. We have some other questions from the audience as well, but I will keep this question to ask to everybody in the panel discussion, because I think it's relevant to all of you. One question from my side, and maybe this will be interesting for Zors as well, because you mentioned that you are cooperating with startups. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So what is your connection with these startups? I mean, how do you work along with them?
Well, it's been a journey, actually. Before I started working with biowaste, I actually started as an intern at at the insect production company. So that's where I started my journey. It started with the head of research at the beet company gaining an interest in this insect production company, where they were presenting at a conference. And because the Bergen region has been looking for suitable technologies for our region for a long time, so he was interested and kind of started the dialogue there. And we've been kind of collaborating ever since. So we're collaborating on equipment, technology, knowledge, and also some funding. And we also apply for a research project together. So it's kind of a development together, but then
like
again,
like a small ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah,
but
great.
The issue then, of course, is putting a price on it, and who should pay for what, and who should benefit from what, and how to kind of divide the costs on all the participating actors.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Tonia, for the presentation. Now we move on to the panel discussion. We have around 20 minutes, so everybody will participate on this. So I will start with one common question. Maybe it's a little bit not too original, but still is something that everybody is asking about. So I will start with Evgenia, and then I will ask everybody else, of course. What do you think about COVID-19 and circular business? What do you think the opportunities and threats are there for circular economy based on the situation? Evgenia?
I think at first that this situation, the pandemic situation, revealed the risks we are facing and the
Evgenia, sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak closer to the microphone because the sound is a little bit low? Yes, perfect.
Yes, of course. I say that this situation revealed the risks that we are facing already and the difficulties we have with these linear models. And on the other hand, because of this situation, some things were accelerated. So we have to move on with solutions more quickly than maybe we have thought. And I will just take an example with the food industry that was so much disturbed, for example, in the transportations, in the harvesting, in all the different parts of this process. But on the other hand, we have seen that now we can focus more on the local value chains, on the smaller value chains, something that is one of the principles of the circular economy. So at the same time, the challenges are the opportunities, and I think that we can keep the fact that we can accelerate a bit this transition to the circular economy.
Great, thanks. George, from the investor perspective, how did COVID-19 actually, did it accelerate things, or the risks appear to be more now for investors that are more reluctant in investing?
No, I think that there was a slowdown in some of the investments, but that was related with the focus, for instance, on the cities has changed because there was a need to support, for instance, the HoReCa companies because there was a huge impact on tourism and stuff like that. So there was some shift on the investments, but those are related with the impacts and the urgency to respond to a certain sector. But on the other hand, what this rises up is the need of this that Eugenia was saying, the local. So there is a need to go local and to invest local and to have the local partners involved, so to produce local. And on the other hand, everything that is related with the digitalization. So we understood that digitalization is the way forward, and many of the things that we are doing can be digitalized or can have models that are based on the digitalization of things. Of course, not all. To raise the insets, we need we cannot digitalize them. It's a strange word in English, but there is clearly a need of the business models, and I'm thinking about the digital twins, for instance, a tool that has risen a lot and help us develop and think ahead of the time through a digital process.
Great, thanks. Tonia, so how did the COVID-19 actually affected your kind of business, let's put it this way?
Yeah, well, as we work in the commercial market, we saw definitely a very drop in some waste fractions and an increase in some others. On the household front, it was probably not that much changed, maybe even a little increase in waste as more people are home rather than at work. But one of the things that we have been working with a very select few customers on this food pilot project, and when we then got hit by COVID, the supply was even more unpredictable. We know that biowaste is an unpredictable waste stream. It can increase or decrease, or the composition changes a lot, but this made it even more difficult to predict and to plan. So for us, it was a test for flexibility in the production systems. Absolutely.
More uncertainties. Okay, great. Thanks. So I see a question coming from the audience, and I see we have two similar questions. So the one question is from Lou, if I'm not reading wrong. Okay, do you think that this kind of projects can be developed in countries in Latin America where not always you have the technology? And I'm going to another question which is similar, just to sum up the questions from the chat, because it's similar, and it says, like from Hanson, if I'm seeing correctly, that the circular economy should be designed in a way that no country is left behind. Are these solutions, all that we're talking about now, designed with developing countries in mind? So yes, the question is more or less the same. And I would actually want to add up on this question because for me it's very important. Because we're talking, okay, we're in the Western civilized countries here, you know, in Europe, and we're talking about circularity in the environment. But it's very important to keep in mind that there are a lot of people in developing countries that, of course, they want to pay attention to the environment, but they have other very serious problems. For example, their living per se. So, do you think that this circularity can be applied in developing countries? What will be the cost for that? Would people be able to adapt on these circumstances, or the fact that their own pocket is affected is more important than the protection of the environment? So, Zors, I will start with you. What do you think?
I can give you a personal view here. So we are also working in other countries on the Eastern Europe where they are on the different stage of development when it comes to waste that we are. But so the opportunities are higher there, and I probably do not agree when you're saying that it comes from their pocket, because what has been shown is that these types of projects have revenues that can become profit. So when you implement it correctly, so you are saving money and not spending money. So and that's why it's needed. And for instance, just to have in mind that we are doing this to this development aid funds. And the requirements are fully aligned with the requirements from the EU when it comes to circularity, all of those. But of course, we need to go step by step, because they sometimes they need to make a small step before then go to the big step. If they do not collect the waste, they need to start collecting and then properly, and then we can think about what to do with it. So there is this need of steps. But I think that there is a huge opportunity, and sooner as we start with this thinking in mind, it's easier to implement and the profits are higher.
Great, thanks. Tonya, what do you think about this question, this dilemma, to put it this way?
Well, I can take the technological standpoint here, I guess. Well, for example, for the insect production industry, this kind of technology can be made very simple, and it's based on kind of natural systems. It can be implemented with very simple equipment and more manual labor than automation, which is needed here in Europe to kind of facilitate the costs. But it can be done very manually and can be upscaled in steps to facilitate with increased amounts of collected biowaste and the capacity of the financial situation in the region. So I absolutely think that these technology and these projects have the possibility to also work for circularity also in other parts of the world.
So they can be easily replicated independently of the conditions. Okay, yes, great.
Yes.
Great, thanks. Evgenia, what do you think?
First, I agree with the previous speakers, of course, and I just want to say that when we say about circular models, we don't just mean something very new. Absolutely, it can be an old one, a bit changed or adapted. So we don't need to think that just Tonya said that this is a natural process, but we are imitating it. So we don't need to think that it's something very complex, a circular model. It can be very simple. It can be just some things adapted, or think more about, for example, the raw materials you are using, or that you are not throwing away you're not just disposing your waste, but you are using it as a compost, as a fertilizer. That's a simple change in your process, in your model, that can save money also. So I think that when we talk about circularity, it's always good because you are more resilient, and that's always good in long term. That's always a profit and benefits any business or organization or process.
Stavros, we can't hear you.
I'm muted. Yeah, now I can. Yeah, sorry. So we talk about business, money, and so on and so forth. Okay, because as I said earlier, saving the environment is important, but unfortunately or not unfortunately for companies, profit is also important. So my question, and I will stay with you, Evgenia, again. My question here is the following. It has to do with circularity and profitable business. And are there any trade-offs between profitability and circularity? Can an organization be really profitable when adopting a circular business model, or circularity, at least now when we're talking about this era, is actually downgrading the profit? What do you think?
Okay, maybe it's not so mature yet, the concept, and maybe not in all cases we can say it's now that we are talking profitable, the business, but it's not something that's just as wishful thinking. We are I think in the right direction. There are a lot of drawbacks. We have discussed about them. All the speakers said different things, but we have a lot of common, I think, about the legal, the economic, or different other things. But I think we are in a good way. And as I said, when you want to be more resilient, it's always, you have less risks, and that's always a profit for a company, for me, even in the long term.
Yeah, we're getting there. But
exactly, we are getting there. Maybe we're not still there in all situations, but we are getting there.
So, because you mentioned the risk, I will go to Zors, because Zors mentioned in the presentation the risks of funding. And my question, of course, is the same. I mean, concerning the trade-offs. But again, we see from the investor side. I mean, and you talk about the risk and education, and knowledge of the investors. So, do you think that the investors actually are reluctant to invest because of they see that there is a lack of profitability, or also the lack of knowledge of circular economy makes them more reluctant because they don't actually know this field? What do you think?
This is let me just give a step back and to go to a Eugenia point on the fact that sometimes we associate circularity with technology, high technology, or a big innovation, and it's not like that. It's a big innovation in one sector, or that was already used in another sector, or sometimes it's just to give 2 steps back and do exactly what we did before and readapt that. So it's not so. Of course, there is a technology, and the technology helps us all here. But it's more than that. And on the other hand, let me just say something, because most of the investors, of course, they look for the profit. If they are an investment fund, their business is to make the money, generate money. So that's their business. But if nowadays investors look for more things, because that's the market responding to the climate emergency. But we see the investors looking for what we call ESG, environmental, social, and governance goals. So their investments have to comply with these requirements. So you often see big investors such as BlackRock or other that covers different sectors across the world with strong requirements on these topics. You see companies, big companies that were completely linear, like IKEA or other companies, now changing their business model and readapting to circular economy. And in some cases, they already profit from changing their business model, which at the first sight, it could seem like losing money because they will not sell so much. But if you take the whole picture and you see that they use less resources, so they are profit more. And sometimes the the price that they can sell a second-hand product is higher, or the margin that they have is higher than on the first hand. So there are different opportunities there that make this kinds of business profitable. Of course, in some cases, this is not one size fits all. In some cases, this is not the story. Having regulation on circularity can imply costs, and that costs reduce the revenues. But that's a part of the regulatory work to be done, and that's something that must have in mind on the investors.
Yes, clear. Tonia, I'm adding to this question another sub-question for you. So this has to do with profitability, but another thing that it's related to that is, okay, it's clear that from the answers from Evgenia and George that circularity doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting less money. And this is the answer I was expecting to get. But the other thing is like, how can we motivate business to actually implement circular business models, since we see that the profitability is there, and not just talk about it without risking greenwashing? And just for the audience, I think greenwashing is considered to be a claim from the company that actually have green products, but this is a false claim. This is greenwashing, if I'm not mistaken. So what about that, Tonia?
Yeah, because that's some of the tendencies we're seeing in the upstream market. They're very eager to cheer for you and clap for you, but when you ask them to change their practices or actually invest or take active part in the value chain, you kind of get met with, oh, that's great, but not until it's profitable for us as well. And then if no one actually supports the start of the development, you will never get anywhere. So actually highlighting the possibilities and actually making that putting some emphasis on that business model development in the start, and kind of documenting that you've done thorough work on a more long-term perspective on this, and not just here now this is green and fun kind of part, but that you actually have a solid plan for how to make this work and how to scale it up over time, and highlight how you're going to do it and who you're collaborating with to do this, to make, because people are afraid to take risks, and anything that's new and undocumented is scary generally. And it's, unfortunately, we're still in the time and age where when you're going out to win contracts, the final costs of the solution is usually given more value to the end decision rather than any other elements of the contract and any other. So that's kind of also establishing these ways and these indicators to actually use for the companies that put out contracts, to actually valorize the environmental and social impact as well as the financial. I think that's important also to kind of enforce this adaptation of new solutions and more circular value chains.
Great, thanks. So because we have 1 minute left, however, I don't want to leave somebody unsatisfied from the audience. So I have a very specific question, and I wanted to answer everything. So the question is, what is happening with the biowaste that are produced in homes or are not vegetables? Okay, I don't know if everybody can answer that question, but I will start with Tonia, and then I will give the floor to everybody else.
In the Bergen region right now, the commercial waste, which is not vegetables, goes to composting outside the region, and we have just started collecting biowaste from households, so that's sent for biogas production in Denmark at this point. So we're hoping to get more local solutions, so that's why we're working on this.
Excellent, excellent. Zors, this is the question. I'm not sure whether it's relevant for you or not, to be honest.
I'm not an expert there, but I say that from other things that we do, that depends a little bit on the country and the way that you have to solve the problem. In some cases, it goes to waste to energy. Other cases, unfortunately, goes to the landfill. But we are moving towards the reuse of those materials. But that depends on the country or even on the municipality in some cases.
Yeah, so it's based on the situation. Yes, great. Evgenia, the last word for you as well.
I agree. I'm not representing any waste management company, so I cannot answer very specifically. But I know from my expertise that in the biowaste sector, the selection of biowaste is the most important and the most difficult part simultaneously and in many countries. And I can say for Greece that we still have this problem and we don't separate biowaste in all municipalities, in all regions and things like that. So it is indeed important and it depends.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I have one last question, which is not directed actually to the speakers, and it has to do whether it will be possible to get the slides shown today on the webinar. It will be recorded. I know that there is a live streaming on YouTube. For the slides, to be honest, I don't have the answer for that. Whether James has the answer, he could just type it on the chat to reply to that, because I don't have the answer. And hopefully we will get that. So I would like to thank you all very, very much for your contributions. The discussion was very interesting. All the presentations were excellent. I hope that the audience was also satisfied. We tried to answer all the questions. I hope we did so. Thank you very much again. And I will give now again the floor to Manolis in order to close this session. So goodbye for me and thank you very much.
Thank you, Stavro. Congratulations to all of you, Evgenia, George. Before we close, I'd like to announce or remind that next Wednesday, 16th of June, there is the next webinar with the theme Safety and Acceptance of Bio-Based Products. And the last one is again on Wednesday, 30th of June, and the theme is policy influence. Thank you very much again. We appreciate your attendance to this meeting. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.